So this was one of the most exciting PlayStation showcases I have seen in quite a long time. And one of the things and one of the vibes that I could tell that Sony was really going for was pretty much going all in on remakes and just kind of getting things back to the modern platforms, not just remakes, remasters, collections, so on and so forth. We're going to break it all down in this video, but that was kind of the general vibe I got from this showcase was, hey, let's bring back all these games that are stuck behind these older consoles that aren't able to be played if you don't have the existing hard or the previous hardware, and let's bring it over to modern platforms, and not just PlayStation, but also a lot of PC as well. And they didn't say anything about Xbox, but we can infer by some of these third-party stuff that it is Xbox. Now, one of the first remakes, and this was one of the biggest announcements, and they ended off on this, that it completely blew my mind. I did not see this coming. Is the God of War Trilogy remake. I know there was a lot of rumors and talks about there being another like side-scrolling God of War game, which they did announce, and that is God of War: Son of Sparta. It's a 2.5 game. It is a prequel of the prequel with Kratos as a human before he becomes into a god, and it's kind of you're with his brother, the same brother that you meet in God of War Ascension on the PSP. So it's kind of an homage to that, and kind of it almost seems like Sony's like, hey, like we haven't completely moved past the Greek storyline. So it almost makes me wonder, like, if they're going to utilize this dual storyline in the future of having Greek Kratos as alongside with the Norse storyline of Kratos, and kind of having both games instead of saying, hey, this is complete, we're moving on to the next one. Maybe they kind of bring it back, because I know a lot of that storyline holds true in a lot of people's hearts. And but obviously we're going to talk about the Trilogy remake. Now, from what it sounds like, this is going to be a complete remake from the build up, and I'm really excited for this because I've actually not played all the God of War games all the way through. This is a game I never actually owned because I didn't own a PS2. I was a GameCube kid, but it was a game that I played a lot at my friend's house. I have also dabbled with an emulation, and it was one of those games where I'm like, I want to get into it in emulation, but I hate the way the controls are. It's just not very modern in that sense, and I'm really I'm really excited that they're going to put this game most likely in a way where you can play it in more modern controls, and also see it in this new visual aspect of it, because there's a lot of very grand environments that you play in, and it'll be really cool to kind of see this in a more modern art style and a more modern engine. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. Obviously, we still have to see if they take anything out, because obviously it was a very graphic game with a lot of nudity and things like that. So I'm curious if they're going to like alter that in any sort of way, but we'll see. Also, another big collection. This one isn't a remake, but it is a remaster, or the volume 2 of a previous remaster, and that is Metal Gear Solid Volume 2, where it is Metal Gear Solid 4 as alongside one of the other, I'm drawing a blank on the other Metal Gear Solid game, but they're also bringing back a Game Boy Color Metal Gear Solid game, which I played a lot as a kid because I had a Game Boy Color, and I actually had that game. That was the first, and believe it or not, the only Metal Gear game I ever played. I used to love that game. I don't know how much it holds up in today, but I'm curious to check that out, I will say. Oh, and then the other game that they're referring to is Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. That was the other one that was going to be launching alongside Metal Gear Solid 4. And with them also announcing that Metal Gear Solid Collection, Master Collection Volume 1, that's been out for the past few years now, is getting a big update, not only on the PlayStation 5, but also on the Nintendo Switch 2, as well as the Xbox. So it's going to be kind of a little bit more up to par of what we see on PC, with higher resolutions and frame rates and things like that. It is really cool to kind of play Metal Gear Solid on a modern system, because from what I understand with Metal Gear Solid 4, obviously that game was stuck on the PS3, and not only that, it didn't really run the best. It was in that part of the PlayStation generation where games were really chugging along. They were really pushing the hardware to the limit. So this time we're actually going to see it in a more like polished state. So I'm really curious to check this out. I have Metal Gear Solid Volume 1 collection to play on my backlog, so I see myself picking this up as well, so I can check out Metal Gear Solid 4. So this is a game, if you're a Metal Gear Solid fan, I'm sure you're pretty pumped to see and play in its truest form and the new consoles and the new platforms. Now let's go into survival horror action. So I'll tell you what, if you're a fan of this genre, you have been eaten. This is not a genre that I necessarily play a lot. I played a little bit of the Resident Evils. I've never played Silent Hill games. It's not necessarily a genre that has piqued my interest throughout the years, but the two games that are coming out this year I'm going to start off with the first one that's coming out very, very soon, the next couple weeks, and that is Resident Evil Requiem. This is Leon returning from Resident Evil 4, and I believe it was Resident Evil 7. Correct me if I'm wrong, Resident Evil fans, but I do know obviously he's most notably known for Resident Evil 4. But it's going to be like a dual gameplay thing where you're playing as this woman, and that's going to be more of a slower paced horror type of game, but then you can play as Leon. That's a lot more action where he has this chainsaw and guns, and it's just a way more action-packed game. And I love it when games do that, where they kind of give you two varieties of ways to play it, and it keeps things really interesting because sometimes some games can get kind of drawn out and boring where you're kind of doing the same thing. And I like how the approach they're taking here, where it's kind of giving the best of both worlds for people who like one or the other. So this is a game that I'm really interested in as somebody who's not a big Resident Evil guy. This one sticks out to me a lot because it does look super fun and it looks awesome. Now, obviously, for its main competitor, they're different, I know, but it's kind of the biggest competitor to Resident Evil in the horror genre, and that is Silent Hill. And this one specifically, Silent Hill Townfall. This is a first-person Silent Hill game, and that looks pretty freaking awesome, I will say. I never played the previous Silent Hill games, but being that this one is in first person, it really piques my interest a little bit more than the previous ones. The atmosphere of it looks really cool, the horror aspects. Um, it does look like a Silent Hill game from what I can tell. Obviously, the classic fog and whatnot. I'm really curious how they're going to make these FPS mechanics feel in this game, but this is a game that I'm actually really interested in that I wouldn't have been previously. Now, talk about bringing another classic IP, and that is Castlevania Belmont's Curse. This is a new 2D entry into the Castlevania franchise, and this is also being made by the people who played Dead Cells. Now, I played Dead Cells. Dead Cells was an absolute awesome Metrovania type game, side-scroller game that, look, I'm not somebody who plays a ton of side-scrolling 2D games, but there's very few out there that really pique my interest. Obviously, we have the likes of Dead Cells that I really enjoyed a lot. I played Prince of Persia: A Lost Crown, which I enjoyed a lot, and I also played a little bit of Hollow Knight. It wasn't really for me, but every now and then there's a 2D game that really piques my interest in. Castlevania, that's the one that I played prior, back in the Super Nintendo days, but it's been a long time since I've really touched it. It's not really my genre of games that I play a ton of, but considering that the people that are making this is the Dead Cells team, and I absolutely loved Dead Cells, this to me is going to be an instant get for me. I am super excited to see this in the classic Castlevania way. Obviously, the name of this game built a genre alongside Metroid, and so I'm really excited to check this one out. And I think they picked the perfect dev team to kind of revitalize this Castlevania franchise in the 2D space. Now let's talk about a little bit of some new IP, some third-party games. These are honestly the part I was most excited about. That is the first one being John Wick. Now this game, I love the John Wick movies. These movies are absolutely awesome. So when I immediately saw Keanu on the screen, I was like, oh my gosh, this is John Wick. This is awesome. I'm super pumped. Okay, let's see what the gameplay looks like. They start showing some gameplay footage. It looks like Sifu with a little bit of Arkham. Obviously not so much of the dashing of Arkham. It's a little bit more reminiscent of Sifu, but it seems to be, from what I was gathering, that it is like a prequel of the John Wick movies where he's actually playing as that not the unretired version of himself that prior to those movies. So I'm really curious to see more of the John Wick lore, as well as his combat, and if how the shooting's going to implement with it as well, because Sifu was a little bit more of a melee type game. So this is a game that I am super pumped for. This was probably my game I am most excited about coming out of this whole state of play by far. Now for another game that I've never heard of, this is a sequel, but it is Kenna Scars of Cosmora. Now, the first game I was looking into is Kenna Bridge of Spirits, I believe. And everything that they've said was that this game is going to be a larger, deeper world than the previous, as well as a more in-depth combat system. And it's coming this year in 2026. Like I said, I never really heard of it. I think the visual art style of this game looks really cool, really interesting. It has this Pixar-like look, and after seeing this game, I was like, okay, let me check out the first one. So I went and watched some reviews of the first one, and And the game looks awesome. So this is a game, it's actually on sale right now. So if you've never played or never heard of it like me, and I know I'm not the only one in the boat, because even people in the comments of the review videos are watching, like I'm here after watching the announcement of number 2. So this is a game that I think if you've never heard of this, go check out the first one. If they catch it on sale, like I said, right now I believe it's like half off. I'm gonna pick it up. This looks super interesting, and this game just, it looks pretty freaking awesome. I'm not gonna lie. Now let's get into Bungie, man. This game has gone through a whole cycle of drama and storylines and everything. That is a Marathon. So they give a release date of Marathon, and that's going to be March 5th. That's actually a lot sooner than I thought. I thought they were going to push this in probably the summertime. I didn't think they would wait this long to announce a release date this close. But I do see that they're starting to do playtests of it. You have people like Burnt Peanut and other streamers that are in there playing with devs. Question still remains, like, will they be able to pull themselves out of the hole that they dug themselves in? I'm really curious. I know there's a lot of people that are excited about the idea of this game, even me. Like, I'm a moderate fan of extraction shooters. I do love the art style of this game. It looks super sick and very unique. So look, the price tag is going to be kind of tough. It's one of those games where I'm going to have to wait and see, because the idea of it really piques me. But I just have a lot of concerns with Bungie recently, as well as Sony putting a lot of pressure on this game to be what it needs to be. So yeah, I'm really curious. I think it's going to be a good counterbalance to the success that we're seeing with Arc Raiders. Obviously, with Arc Raiders being more of a slower pace of game that's more focused on the PvE, this game seems to be a little bit more focused on the PvP part of it and a little bit more faster pace. So yeah, I'm curious to check this one out. Like I said, I'm gonna wait to see how the reviews shake out. Maybe it's a game that I pick up later down the road, but it's not necessarily a must get for me right now. Now another game is Sorrows. So this is the team that made Returnal. I don't really know much about Returnal. I understand that it is a third-person shooter that is like a roguelike in the AAA space, which is kind of unheard of. You don't really see that too often. This game kind of looks like more of Returnal, but better and bigger. Like I said, I don't know if it's a game necessarily for me, but everything that I'm seeing, it does look pretty cool, and a lot of people are really pumped about this, especially fans of Returnal. Like I said, we're seeing more and more of it, so this isn't the first time that we're actually seeing this game. But I've heard, like I said, I've heard amazing things. Maybe I should check out Returnal coming into this. But yeah, Sorrows, April 30th. Now let's talk about a little bit of the trends that I've noticed, and I briefly mentioned in the beginning of this video. Obviously, the big one that was absent in this showcase was Wolverine. I know they talked about spring 2026. Obviously, we're not in spring yet. It is still winter, but nothing there. So it sucks to kind of see that there's nothing mentioned there. But we knew that coming into it, that they said that, hey, we're not going to be at the showcase. But I do think this kind of brings up an interesting point and a question that I'm curious to bring up to you guys, and you can let me know in the comments what you think is, do you think Sony is relying too much on the past? This game, oh, and mind you, I didn't even bring up the whole Konami collection. Konami is doing this whole big thing with Sony that they showcase a ton of games. I didn't want to get into every game in this showcase. I kind of want to narrow it down to the ones that I honestly found interesting to me personally. But if you guys want to check out the whole state of play, I'm sure you've already watched it. These are just kind of the ones. But I'm curious if this generation of console almost feels like a generation of like, hey, you remember all those games that we had in the previous consoles that didn't run that well? Well, let's upscale it so it's able to play at higher resolutions and put it on all platforms. So, and let's make it a better experience than what it was prior. That's what it honestly feels like the Sony strategy was to this game. Obviously, it's probably one facet of the major strategy, but I can't help but look past the most successful things that I've seen from the PlayStation 5 generation. This from Sony is really bringing back these classics, bringing back these games, these collections, these old IPs, kind of relying on nostalgia to kind of hide from the fact that we're not really seeing any new IPs from them like we did in the PlayStation 4 generation. PlayStation 4 generation, it felt like every year there was something new coming from PlayStation, and this year it's like it's hard because you look at the other side of the aisle and you look at Xbox. Well, whether or not you think some of the games that they're coming out is good or not, they're throwing a lot at the wall, a lot of new IPs, so much so that they're honestly throwing a lot of their classic Halos and Gears of War and Fables, which, I mean, those are coming back now, but it took a long time for those to come back because it felt like they were ghosts for a while. And meanwhile, on this side, on the Sony side, it's like Hey, here's another remake. Here's another remaster. We're gonna charge you $10 for that remaster, by the way, which that's a whole other story. But yeah, let me know what you think of that. I'm curious, like, do you think this is a good or a bad thing? I don't think there's nothing wrong with it. I think the only bad part of it is that it almost feels reliant on what they're doing, or on their business model so far this generation, because it just feels like everything that they're trying to put out just hasn't really hit outside of like your Ghost of Yotei, for example, or your Spider-Man 2s, which are just sequels to what they've done in the PlayStation 4. Speaking of Spider-Man 2, they did add that Spider-Man 2 is now coming to PlayStation Plus, so that's pretty cool to see. Not bad if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber and you haven't played Spider-Man 2 for some reason. It is now on PlayStation Plus for you to go check out. Overall, if I had to grade this showcase, I would give it a B. I think they had a lot of great stuff to show. They showed a lot of cool remakes and a lot of backlog games that you can go and play. Just a lot of fresh updates that and revisiting of games that you just haven't seen before, especially in the Konami space. Like I said, I didn't really go too deep into a lot of those, but I mean, we even had like a Dead or Alive 6 that was announced, which is pretty cool. Just a ton of different stuff. Like I said, I know I missed some things. Let me know if there's any games that you like that you saw from the state of play in the comments down below. Feel free to let me know which ones they are if I didn't mention in this video. Like I said, I wanted to keep it relatively concise. I didn't want to break down everything. Just kind of want to talk about some of the things that I really enjoyed and I saw out of this event, as well as just kind of like my overall thoughts of it. Like I said, I would give it a B. I think this is one of the better state of plays that I've seen in a while, because honestly, the last few have just been real duds and really uninspiring and nothing really going on. So, like I said, the one I'm most hyped for by far is the God of War remake trilogy. That one I am super excited for. I know we're pretty far out from that, it seems like, especially since they're going to be remaking 3 games. But a more recent one is the John Wick one. Like I said, I'm super pumped to see John Wick. But if you guys liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, everybody.